Hello viewers, this is Fahim Munaim welcoming you all to the Editor's Guest program. Today we have in our studio a very dynamic, elegant and a distinguished gentleman as our guest. Before we move on to the discussion, let me welcome him to the studio. Dr. Shashi Tharoor, welcome to Maasranga Television.
Good to be here, Fahim. Thank you very much.
Before I move on to the discussion, let me give you a very brief background of Dr. Tharoor. He is, as you all know, that he is an author, a politician, a former international civil servant, and currently he is a second-term MP in the Lok Sabha. He is also the chairman of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on External Affairs, and previously he served as State Minister for Human Resource Development and also Minister of State for External Affairs, the Government of India. He had a very distinguished career at the UN, and he worked if I believe, the last one was Under Secretary General during Kofi Annan's tenure. As I said, that he is an author, and one of the reasons that I got him in the studio is because he has been visiting Dhaka for the Haze Festival, I believe.
That's correct.
And Dr. Tharoor has written almost 15 books.
The 15th one is coming out in January.
15th one is coming out in January. His books have been translated into quite a few languages, and he has been getting many awards in each field. In politics, he got an award. In literature, he got an award. You name it. He got an award in the fields that he had worked. And his education background is he has been educated in India and in the United States. He got his doctorate from Fletcher School of Diplomacy at Tufts University. And interestingly, the World Economic Forum called him the global leader of tomorrow. We'll get into that in our discussion. About his journalistic career, if I may add that I can call him a journalist too, because he has had written many op-eds, editorial columns in many newspapers, starting from New York Times, Los Angeles Times, Washington Post, and even in Bangladesh, he has been a columnist in the Daily Star. So as you can see that he has wide interest in many areas, and we are very fortunate to get you in the studio. I know you are extremely busy, but thanks for your time. And now we move on to the discussion. How is it in Dhaka?
Well, it's wonderful to be back. You know, I'm embarrassed to admit that I've only been here 3 times in my life. The first was in 1977. I was a student. I was actually here to look at questions of freedom of expression for a research project. Then I came back in 1994 as a United Nations official at the invitation of the military to address the Military Staff College in Mirpur on UN peacekeeping.
Right.
And my third visit is now 20 years later, and that too to address a literary festival.
Right.
Though I have had the privilege of calling on the Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister, the Speaker.
You're in the papers
so
today.
I didn't realize that. But the fact is that naturally when I've come here, given that I have also this additional hat of being a member of Parliament and the chairman of an External Affairs Committee, naturally the government was keen on meeting me, and the High Commission here inevitably felt it necessary to schedule these meetings. So it's been a very rushed schedule. I've not been able to see as much of Dhaka as I would have liked, but I must say I'm formidably struck by your traffic, which has dramatically worsened over the times that I have visited.
Okay. Shashi, what I wanted to ask you is that the visit, as you said, has been also turned into kind of an official also, since you are, heading the Standing Committee on External Affairs. I'll get into that area later. But first of all, tell me your experiences in the Haze Festival, where so many well-known authors are there, and you represent as an author. And your last book, which is had how many reprints? 43, I believe.
The Great Indian Novel was my first novel, my second book, and it was actually it is, I think, the only one, if I'm not mistaken, of my books to have been translated into Bangla. And it's available here in Bangla as well at the festival. But what's happened with this book is that it somehow struck a chord with the Indian reading public. And though it has also appeared in foreign languages and foreign editions with modest success, in India it has been a perennial favorite, and now a new generation has discovered it. So my publishers brought out a Silver Jubilee edition, a 25th anniversary edition of the book, retypesetting it, binding it, new cover, hardcover, and so on, in order to have it almost out as a new book again. I'm very pleased about that because, you know, one writes to be read, and to be read by so many people over so long a time is richly satisfying.
Now, you have the fiction side and the non-fiction side.
Yes, that's true.
Now, which area would you think that reaches people more?
Fahim, it's a difficult question to answer which reaches more, but I can tell you which is easier for me to write, and that's non-fiction. Of my first 5 books, 4 were fiction.
Right.
But I found that to write fiction, you not only need time, which was scarce enough for me as a increasingly progressively busy and senior UN official, and almost impossible for me as a politician, but you also need a space inside your head to create an alternative universe, to populate it with characters, people, episodes, incidents, dialogues that are as real to you as what you're encountering in your daily life. Now, if you can't preserve that illusion by writing a bit every day, the result is that you won't be able to sustain it. So I have for the last 15, 20 years, my computers have been littered with incomplete manuscripts because I begin a novel, then the work is interrupted by some urgent official preoccupation.
Right.
Then I try and come back to it, I have another interruption, I have to travel, and peacekeeping, I was handling the Yugoslav civil war, whatever. And then you come back and that world of illusion has been shattered. And once it's shattered, to rebuild it again, it's like a building of glass. You cannot rebuild it each time. So I found that if I wanted to actually publish, that trying to doggedly persist with fiction was going to do me a disservice because I would never find enough time. Whereas non-fiction is interruptible. I can begin an op-ed or a long essay, and even if I'm forced to put it aside for a lengthy period of time, if I return to it and reread it, I can pick up the threads and continue.
No, I see your point, but then again, every author, as you said, wants that their piece has to be read. And that's why the translations take place, and good ones. Your one book, which really I'm sort of a little curious as far as the naming, is the India Sutra.
Well, actually, we've changed it.
You have.
That is the forthcoming book.
Okay.
It's going to be called India Shastra instead.
Okay, what was
because I don't think there's any sutra in it. It is a sort of shastra. It's laying out if you like, ideas, principles, doctrines about contemporary India. It's an attempt to, in a sense, it's completing a trilogy of books about India. I began with India from Midnight to the Millennium, which was my, I suppose in non-fiction, my magnum opus. It's a grand sweep of 50 years of independent India from 1947 to 1997 when it was published. And it covered politics, economics, society, culture in one big sweep. That book was a surprisingly big success. It continues to be read in the West as well as in India. In fact, President Clinton cited it in his address to the Indian Parliament when he came as president. And then 10 years later, my publishers asked me to sort of bring a companion volume out, which I mischievously called The Elephant, the Tiger and the Cell Phone. A collection of essays about the increasing transformation of India from the slow-moving, ponderous elephant of cliché to, perhaps acquiring the stripes of a lithe and agile and sinewy tiger. Okay. That was, and the cell phone is the instrument of that change. We can talk about that separately.
Right.
Now, 7 years after that book, a different publisher, in fact, my original publisher at Penguin has started his own imprint, David Davidar, is with Aleph Books. And he was very keen that I come back to him at Aleph and do a new essay collection. This time I've had to rewrite a little more than I had done for the earlier books. The earlier books, the Elephant, the Tiger and Cell Phone were essentially a collection of pieces, essays and so on, pretty much as originally published. They were still fresh. Whereas today, India is changing so rapidly that I've had to do a lot of new work, including, of course, on Mr. Modi's government. So it will include some analysis of the first 6 months of Mr. Modi's government as well.
Oh, I see. So you have already gone into the analytic.
Oh, yes. In fact, the book is still in the process of being finished. So it will be really hot off the press when it comes out in January. It will only go to the press in December.
I see. So are you going to have a series of that? Like for 6 months and then
There's no, we'll have to see, but let us see how this is received. The truth is that I have not been hesitating to express my views.
No.
You can see my columns, my blogs on the internet.
Right.
So I'm out there. But certainly when a book comes out, you have to let it breathe for a while before you think of replacing it with another.
Now, speaking of Prime Minister Modi and speaking of blogs and Twitters. You were at one time the leading,
leading Indian politician on Twitter. In fact, for a while I was a leading Indian on Twitter.
Right.
Then I was overtaken by all the movie stars.
And I'm told Modi has overtaken.
Now, finally in 2013, Mr. Modi overtook me.
Okay.
Until then, I still had the lead.
Okay.
But now he has not just overtaken me, he is almost three times my number.
That.
Yeah.
What is he doing that you didn't?
Well, he's the Prime Minister, for one thing. So that gives you a tremendous appeal. But let me face facts and admit that he is a tremendous communicator and he's captured the imaginations of large numbers of people.
True. You're sure you're saying the right thing? Because
look, I as an opposition politician have a couple of golden rules. One is you don't criticize your own government outside on foreign soil, even a friendly soil like Bangladesh.
Right.
The second thing is that I also acknowledge what needs to be acknowledged.
Okay.
I have been careful, frankly, to confine my praise to those areas requiring praise, namely his communication skills, his speech making, his ability to deliver the perfect soundbite or the one-liner. But that, I'm afraid, is not what governance is all about. That's only one aspect, and we have to see what results the government is going to give us when it comes to action and to outcomes.
Right. Now, speaking of that, you also ran into a little bit of trouble with your own party. Can you clarify? We were a little confused that you have been removed as a spokesperson for Congress because of your praise for Modi government.
Well, no, I think there were some issues with some people in my party, and it seemed the simpler thing for all concerned that I continue being myself rather than wearing the mantle of speaking for the institution of the party. And that suits me fine because, frankly, as an individual, I'm free to express my views anywhere. As a member of parliament, I speak in parliament. As a chairman of a committee, I speak in the committee. I don't have to be speaking for the party, especially when there is a disagreement of emphasis. You see, my fundamental commitment is very much to the well-being of India, and therefore I find the Congress party the best vehicle to advance that well-being. For me, there's no question of any disloyalty to the party.
Certainly not.
But at the same time, the way in which we go about it will vary from individual to individual. And if the spokespeople are all expected to criticize every single thing Mr. Modi says and does, that is not my style personally. I mean, I'm somebody who will accept, for example, he made a good speech at the United Nations, I'll say he made a good speech at the United Nations. But if he came back empty-handed from Washington, I also say, what did he bring back for India? So that's the kind of balance I strike. Now, for some people, that balance is too much balance. For others, perhaps those who are not politically committed, that is the right balance. We have to see.
I know the feeling. I went through that myself. So.
Welcome to the club in that case.
Shashi, if you, as you know, that it's customary to take a break, and I'll just go out for a break and be back again soon. Viewers, they have to go take a very, very short break, so we'll be back soon.